watching and listening to Conscious Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at consciousevolutionmedia.com.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world, most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to double.org. Are you in the entertainment industry? If you answered yes and you want to promote yourself, your passion, and profession, check out Creative Independent Artist magazines at CIAartists.com. Endorsed by Kids Talk Foundation worldwide.
Love this song.
Hey, welcome again. My name is Lo Wai Chan, host of Your Money and Your Mindset. One more week of hitting the ground running and making your goals and dreams for 2013 come true. So, this show is about not just making money and putting money into your bank accounts. It's working on your mindset, and the knock-on effect is that your relationships get richer, you get happier, you get healthier. So it's really the whole shooting match, so to speak. Now, I'm delighted to have back on the show a very special guest, Derek McManus. He was a police officer we had on last year. And this is the person who survived being shot 14 times by somebody with an assault rifle. Now, Derek was able to basically resume his work and life after what we would call a very traumatic experience. Most people will be happy to just cash in your chips and retire. But no, not for Derek, because he used this event to reinvent himself as a motivational speaker, a trainer, and lately he's been over in your neck of the woods in the US of A to basically cheer people up and give them hope, inspiration, motivation, which is what we all need right now. At this point in time, if you're still suffering on the hangover of what happened in terms of businesses and financial stresses of 2008 and so forth, this person, Derek, is going to talk about how you're going to get past that, because for him, it was a big event that happened. It's how he responded to it that made all the difference. So mindless meandering is not going to get you to your goals, okay? It is having a sense of hope, inspiration, and direction in your business and your personal affairs, and Derek's going to talk about that. So his strategies are what we're going to talk about and what you can use and take away after this interview with him. So welcome, Derek McManus. How are you?
Sensational, Lo. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, I love having you back, because that was just an amazing story. Okay, for all those folks out there who didn't catch the first show with you on it, just take us through how that happened and where you got to where you are now.
Okay. Essentially, I'm a policeman and been a policeman for 37 years. I joined the South Australian Police STAR Group, which is the Special Task and Rescue Group. There we deal with all manner of high-risk arrest, hostage siege situations, cliff rescue, cave rescue, VIP security, underwater recovery, and at the top end of the scale, counter-terrorism. One of our duties was to go and arrest a man who was deemed as high risk, and he was. We went out to arrest him for 197 counts of fraud, 197 counts, and he obviously didn't want to be arrested. He started shooting, fired 18 times in less than 5 seconds, hit me 14 times with either bullets or shrapnel, and I was lying on the ground for 3 hours before they could get me out. Obviously, I survived that, and that story itself is of how I survived it. It's probably something we'll delve into throughout this interview, but I won't elaborate on that now, because that's the basic history. I was shot. I had some massive injuries. I was bleeding profusely. The first doctor that got to me said that he didn't think I was alive when he first saw me. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't making any noise. There was no colour. I wasn't making any sounds. And he thought I was dead. I took a last gasping breath, and that's in his words, and he decided to go to work. And, the rest per se is history. I've now been able to return to police work. It took me 2.5 years of rehabilitation, struggling, learning how to use my fingers for, touches of dexterity, and because my hands were completely immobilised due to the injuries, my stomach was destroyed, bits and pieces. So I had to learn to use everything again, my fingers, walk, all those sorts of things. It took me 2.5 years, but I made a return to work on full duties with no restrictions. And now I have entered the world of motivational speaking, but I would describe that as dragged into that world kicking and screaming. It's not a place that I saw myself. It's not even a place that I deliberately chose I wanted to be in the start. My whole concept of this shooting and my recovery was I went to work, I got shot, I fell down, I got up, I got better, I went back to work. That's how I saw it. And it wasn't until other people started saying to me, Derek, what you have done is amazing. Your strategy for that was, I can't believe it. And I'm going, you serious? And then I started looking at it further and started delving and realised that there was something that other people could take from it.
Okay, I think they call it unconscious competence. Basically, you just got on with it and you used your methods that worked for you, yeah? And obviously other people are thinking, wow, the average person who gets a scare or like a life scare would say, look, I've had it. I'm just going to retire from being out there and just live my life quietly. You've done the opposite because you said, look, I'm not done with living, right?
Absolutely. And unconscious competence is probably the proper term for it. I've always just called it intuitive. I did what I thought was intuitively right. And I think that's come from having sensational parents. My parents brought me up right. I've obviously been exposed to lots of positive environments, and just being in Star Group, our testing and evaluation to be able to become a member of Star Group, you have to have that sort of attitude anyway. But it's not, as you say, it's not something I was aware of. For me, it was intuitive, and I just did what I thought was right. And in many ways, it was actually what other people said, well, you can't do that, Derek. That's not what you should be doing. And I've gone, but it feels right to me, and it worked out right for me.
Okay, so on one hand, you entered, through a rigorous selection process, became a Star Group officer, and that is an elite level of policing, right? Now, the average person will say, well, but I'm just average. How can I take on what Derek does? And, if he tells me to do abseiling, I'm not going to be able to do it just to gain the confidence, because it's a lot to do with self-confidence, isn't it?
Absolutely. Self-confidence is a huge part of it, but I think passion is a bigger part of it. And if you have a passion for what you want to do, then it doesn't matter what the obstacles are, because I don't see myself as anything other than an average person who was very focused on wanting to get into Star Group. And in the very beginning, I didn't actually have a real passion to get into Star Group. I was looking to find a different job outside of the police department. And one of my mates said, well, before you do that, why don't you have a go at Star Group? It would probably suit you. And I had a look at what they do, and I said, well, I can't think of anything else to do, so I'll have a crack at that. Found out I absolutely loved it, and just was absolutely determined to get in. Okay. And from there, I found that I've got, all sorts of different skills.
Yeah, look, it's with the Star Group, it's among other things like, you have to be hyper intelligent, but also it is having mental toughness. Now, do you think mental toughness is something that is kind of missing in today's world, where people just go, it's all too hard, I'm giving up, or I'll go and do something else, without really exploring or pushing themselves to the end, and then saying, perhaps this is not the right road. There's always another option. There's always another option. So we never actually discover what we're made of.
You say there's always another option. There's always another option. I think quite often it's always another excuse. There's always another excuse why I can't, why I shouldn't, why I'm not good enough, why everybody else has got a better chance than me, why they've got the advantage. There's always the excuses, but I honestly think it comes back to passion again, because mental toughness comes to passion. If you've got a passion for what you want to do, there isn't an obstacle too big. If you're doing something just because your boss tells you you have to, and right from the outset you say, well, I know there's going to be problems with this, first obstacle that comes up, you go, see, told you, you tell me, how am I going to solve this? But when we've got a passion for it and we've got a drive, and I'm sure lots of people will be able to relate to the fact that when they've really wanted to do something, some of their friends around them may be saying to them, you can't do that. You'd be an idiot to want to. Why would you want to? You can't possibly. But if you've got the passion for it, you say, I don't care. Watch me. I'm going to do it. And I think that's what it comes down to. The mental toughness comes back to how much you've got passion for it. And I think it also comes back to your self-esteem, your belief in yourself, that even if you have a crack, you stuff it up, it doesn't matter. People will still accept you for who you are. Just because you stuff this up doesn't mean you're going to completely fail at everything in your life.
All right, that's the big distinction, isn't it, that a lot of people don't get, that if you fail once, that means you're branded for life as a loser?
We all doubt that. As soon as people start laughing at us or saying, oh, you idiot, see, I told you were going to stuff up. If we're not, oh, gosh, I didn't actually want to come back to passion, and it's not something I always come back to, but it is in this case. If you're passionate about what you want to do, it doesn't matter what other people say, because it's important to you. And I refer to it many times in the workshops that I do. If you know what your purpose is, if you know what's important to you, you'll just keep on doing it. And once you start achieving it, other people will start saying to you, wow, actually that looks like fun. Can I join in? And I've seen that happen so often with everything from kids through to adults. Those people who really want to do what they want to do achieve it, and other people go, oh wow, I didn't think you were able to. I'm amazed. In fact, I read a quote this morning from Bill Gates, and I can't remember exactly how it goes because I just glossed over it, but it was something like, I failed my university exam, but my best mate passed. As a result, he's now an engineer working for Microsoft, and I own the company. But he failed the exam, his mate passed. He owns the company, his mate's now working for him. It's not what happens, it's how we deal with it. A failure is not a failure, it's just another step in the process.
Yes, you sort of demonstrate that quite aptly when, being shot 14 times, you go, oops, this is a bit of a stuff up. But you just...
That's exactly how I describe it.
Yeah, but then you said, okay, it's only 14 times, it wasn't 15, so let's look on the bright side. I know it sounds really sort of, so I'm not being facetious here, but
No,
really
not in the least.
It is important that people get that, even things like bankruptcy, failures in business or personal relationships, whatever, it's not the end of the world until they bury you and put you in a box and stick you in the ground, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm not being flippant about my situation either. And when you make a light-hearted comment, I'll have a laugh at it. I've got to be very serious. I don't disregard risk. I don't disregard seriousness, impact, all those sorts of things. I don't see myself as a risk taker as much as a risk manager. I just really risky stuff, really adrenaline-filled stuff. But I see myself as a risk manager, not a risk taker. So when you make light-hearted comments and I laugh about it, I don't see myself as flippant. I see myself as just accepting the reality of the choices that I have made. I made choices. As a result of making those choices, I knew there were going to be consequences, and I deliberately addressed my mind to, I'm joining the police department, I'm joining Star Group, I became a diver, I became a sniper, I went and trained with the SAS in counter-terrorism. As a result of all those choices, I knew there was a chance I may be in a situation where I may get shot and injured, I may get shot and killed. I had a conversation with my wife and said, if I died, this is what I would like for the family, if you're able to do that without trying to put too much pressure on her. And we also discussed if I didn't die, then I already knew what the consequences might be, and anything better than death was going to be a bonus. Now, this is a reality that a lot of people don't look at their lives with, whether it's business, whether it's family, whether it's community, whether it's sport, whatever it is. We all make choices that put ourselves in circumstances, and as a result of those choices and those circumstances, there are going to be consequences, right? The consequences may be terrible, they may be absolutely sensational. But if we can accept the reality of the choices we're making, the actions we're taking, and the consequences come, and say to ourselves, if those things happen, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to manage it? I think we've got more chance of having outcome by design rather than outcome by good fortune or misfortune.
Your default. Now, I want to go back to that word you used, passion. You said if you know what you're passionate about, the other things that you have to do to get there aren't so onerous. So what if somebody comes up to you and say, Derek, so very good, you knew what you wanted to do, I don't. How can you point me in the right direction, help me, etc.?
I think just if you don't know exactly what your passion is right now, then I think it's just have a crack at things that are interesting to you. As I said, when I first heard about Star Group, I wasn't interested in Star Group beforehand. One of my friends said, Derek, why don't you have a crack at Star Group before you go changing jobs completely. I wasn't in a good position. I wasn't in a good situation. I was bored with being a police officer at that time. I was looking for something different, but I didn't have a passion. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just flipping through the paper looking for an interesting job. And somebody said, why don't you have a crack at Star Group? And I've gone, well, it sounds interesting. I can't think of anything better now, so I'll have a go at that and then see what else comes up. But it was about doing something that I liked, something that I was interested in, and not wasting my time in those words that you used, mindless meandering. I wasn't wasting my time. I was having a go at something I liked, and it turned out to be the greatest passion. It absolutely turned out to be the greatest passion. I absolutely loved it. Even the fact that I got shot didn't stop me loving the job that I was doing. Again, it came down to risk management rather than risk taking. But I loved that job. Went back to fully operational after the shooting. And lots of people have said to me, what are you doing now, Derek? This public speaking, is that going to be the rest of your life? And to a large degree, I do love it. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. But as a result of doing this, I've been exposed to different worlds and different opportunities, and I've decided to create other opportunities for myself. Again, and something that I haven't said anything to too many people about, and certainly not you, is I've decided I want to have a crack at making a TV series.
Excellent, wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give everybody a concept of how enormous this challenge might be for me, I know nothing about TV, absolutely zero zip, apart from appearing on it a couple of times. But I've come up with a concept. It has nothing to do with the shooting per se itself. It is going to be a lifestyle. It's going to be a combination between a travel show, Man vs. Wild, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, Top Gear, all those sorts of things all put together under a concept that I think binds them all together. And people are saying to me, well, how are you going to do that? You know nothing about TV. And I've gone, you watch me. I'm going to have a decent crack. I may not make it. Hands up now. I may not make it, but I'm going to have a crack at it. And what I'm doing is I'm engaging people who can mentor me through that process. I'm finding, and I've put it out there originally. I said, I've got this idea of making a TV series, and someone said to me, oh, I know a really good cameraman who you'd be able to work with. I know somebody who's done editing. I know, and I've gone, opportunities are opening up to me because I've been able to say this is what my passion is, this is what I'm interested in, and people want to see you succeed. So as a result of that, I've already started doing a little bit of filming for it, and so it's starting to come together. I know nothing about TV before, but I've got a passion. Don't tell me there's a hurdle too big for me, because I'm going to have a crack at it.
Oh, fantastic. So you just put it out there, and in return, honestly, in a sense, wearing your heart on your sleeve, and then, just allowing things to happen around you, but you are still following your passion, because it comes back to that. When you were talking about being in a Star Group, I noticed that you're basically saying, I feel alive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. and there's a distinction I've got to make there too. Star Group was my passion. I absolutely loved going to work. I could not wait to get up in the morning and get on my push bike, ride 20 k's to work and do an hour of training and then an hour of physical training, weights and running and sport and all that sort of stuff, and then do my 7 hours further of work, an 8-hour work day. I could not wait to do it. I loved the job. But my biggest passion in my life was always my family. My family was always number one. Passionate about my job, but if my family ever had reservations about either doing the job originally or going back after the shooting, it would have been a decision like that, and I would have found a different thing to enjoy because my family were the most important to me.
So you are saying for people to draw upon not just what they're passionate about out there in terms of what they can do, it's also taking into consideration, in a sense, it's your invisible means of support, isn't it? Your family, that you've got a close-knit, supportive family to shore you up.
Absolutely. I think if you really want to chase something that you're passionate about, you've got to have a balance in your life. You can't just chase it in that area and then put a little bit of work over here. It's got to be everything working together. And if you don't have that support in the background, because when you're passionate about something, you will put all your energy into it. You will give it everything. You'll put, instead of just working your 8 hours a day at the job that's mundane, I put in 12 and 14-hour days sometimes just to try and get things together. When I was in Star Group, it was, I'd do my 8 hours of work, I'd ride to and from work, that would take me an hour. I'd then come home and do physical training again so that I was in peak fitness so that I could do my job well. I wouldn't have been able to do that unless my family was in balance as well. And to a large degree, I had all that. I do need to fess up now. 2 years after the shooting, my family broke down and I'm now divorced. But there's a whole history behind that, and it turned out to be actually a better thing for both my wife and I. We worked well together when we were married, but it wasn't ideal. But we did what we needed to do to make that work, and we supported each other. But after the shooting, things just became that little bit more difficult, and we decided to separate. But again, everything in balance. My children were the most important thing to me, and the one thing I said to my ex-wife now was, I don't care what we do with each other, I don't care how uncomfortable it is for us, we need to make sure that it's comfortable as possible for the children. Our choices don't need to affect their life adversely if they don't have to. So for both of us, it was about looking after the children, and as a result, I can still go around and sit down and have dinner with her and a new partner and all those sorts of things. We have a great relationship as well. But again, that's taken a lot of hard work, a lot of focus. And lots of people say to me, Derek, how do you do that? It was important to me to maintain a good environment for my children, and my ex-wife and I both did what we needed to do to achieve that. So, yeah, it comes down to what you're passionate about, what's most important to you.
Okay, so you basically are very clear about what is valuable in your life in terms of things, people, jobs, anything else, and that, I think, is the key, that you have to be very clear about it. So, all you people out there on Blog TV, Conscious Evolution Media, Receiver Internet Radio, Radio Roku, New Media Radio TV, and Stitcher, you're watching this interview, take heart and take the advice of Derek in the sense that he's been there, done that, he's walked in your shoes, so to speak. And so what he has to say is very valuable. And so the first thing that seems to come to mind is that you're crystal clear about what you want in your life. And the second thing is that you are willing to pay the price, like being a Star Group officer. Physical fitness was important, so you kept yourself, in peak physical condition. Your family is important, so you put aside the differences you might have with your ex-partner, to make sure that the family still was cohesive. So what else is important in it? Is there a spiritual aspect to your success as a human being?
I'll come back to the spiritual in just a moment. I'd like to just clarify something you said. You said that I was absolutely crystal clear on what's important to my life. And prior to that in the interview, you said, what can I say to people who are not crystal clear, who don't know what their passion is? I've had many periods like that in my life where I didn't know what was important. I wasn't crystal clear on what I wanted. And it took me a little while to figure it out. And just because there is a bit of a haze at any time in our lives doesn't mean we won't find it. It's about chasing what you enjoy doing at that time, and that clarity will come to you. But when it comes to you, you've just got to say, there it is, and now I'm going to do something about making it happen. So there have been those periods in my life where I've just gone, I don't know. And particularly after my divorce, the 2 to 3 years after my divorce, I was still passionate about my job, but the rest of life didn't seem to matter too much. I just wanted to make life good for my children, and my life, per se, was a bit of a meander for a while until I became crystal clear again. So we all have those moments and times in our lives, but it doesn't mean because you're doing it at the moment, that's what the rest of your life is going to be. You've got to be prepared that when that clarity comes, bang, right, let's do something about it. So I was fortunate I was able to do that at the right times.
Right, so
sorry,
the clarity came and you chased it, so you didn't, even though there were the little voices in your head, it was like, nah, it's all quiet. I know 100% in my heart, my mind, my soul, this is the direction I got to go, and I'm going for it.
The little voices in your head, love that saying, because we all have those voices of doubt. What makes you think you could possibly do this? I guess the clarity doesn't actually come as a lightning bolt, bang, I've got clarity. It comes in little bits and pieces. Wow, that's interesting. Let me chase that. Gee, I'm really enjoying this. Wow, I am really, really enjoying this. Damn, this is it. This is what I've got to go for. So it doesn't come as a lightning bolt or something sudden all the time. Sometimes it just creeps up on you. Like Star Group. When I joined Star Group, when I started training towards Star Group, it was like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. And the more I got into it, I just absolutely loved it. So it's not always that lightning bolt, but when it does hit you that this is it, like my TV series, I've in fact my TV series is an ideal thing. I've been talking about the TV series. It'd be good to do this. It'd be nice, interesting to do that, and it probably took me about 2 years before I actually started putting rubber on the road and saying, right, I'm going to make it happen. I'd make notes and put ideas down on paper that if I was to do it, this is the sort of thing we could do. And then all of a sudden it came to me and I said, now's the time. I've just got to have a crack at it. Okay,
so you nurtured the initial sort of little voice, the still little voice in your heart that said, maybe this is something that I'm going to do and take off with it. But you didn't ignore it. That's the important thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And nurtured it was probably the beautiful term. It is a beautiful term for exactly what everybody needs to do. If you get an idea, nurture it and just see how it grows. And if it grows into something you really enjoy, chase it.
Now, just in talking to you, what I get a sense of is a sense of being, I guess, self-confident, not being arrogant or cocky, but just knowing yourself. So what did you do? What are the practical things a person can do to get that sense of, I'm sure of who I am and what I'd like to do in my life and want to do in my life. So what are the practices that you do on a regular basis to get there?
I've been asked this several times, and eventually I started sitting down and actually analysing it rather than just answering question on question. And I believe there are actually 5 drivers in life which will bring us to success. The first driver is optimism. We've got to have an optimistic outlook for the future, and I always have had an optimistic outlook. I've always believed that no matter what's happening, there is something better. I can change things around myself, and I guess that comes from my parents. One of the things my father always used to say was, Derek, every cloud has a silver lining. You've just got to look for it, and it's harder to see that silver lining than it is to see the cloud, but you've got to look for it. So when we have a sense of optimism for the future, we can keep on pushing ourselves because there's value in it. If we don't have a sense of optimism, if we don't have a sense of hope that there is something better, well, that's when we just sit back and go, why would I bother? There's nothing better out there. Why would I bother? So optimism is the first one. You've got to have that optimistic outlook. You've got to believe in your ability to influence your circumstances. Like there's been the global financial crisis, governments make decisions, our life partner, husband, wife will make decisions that we don't like. And sometimes there are influences on our lives we can't change. There's nothing that me from my position can do around us. The next one is passion, and I think I've spoken about passion a little bit already. The fourth one is planning. And planning is something that I think we all do on a regular basis. But sometimes when things get bigger, we don't consciously plan for it. But planning for me doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be detailed. It doesn't have to be written down. For me, planning is just simply some idea of what we might encounter and some idea of how we're going to deal with it. And it really is taking that realistic look at what we might encounter on a day-to-day basis in our own lives and saying, if that does happen, how am I going to manage it? But in planning, lots of people plan for the worst things. Right? They say, if the worst things happen, this is what we need to do. All of our contingency plans, all of our evacuation plans for fires, all of our hazard management plans are for what things need to be done if everything goes wrong. I think we also need to plan for the future when things go right as well. Because one of my biggest anticlimaxes in my life was the day that I returned to Star Group on full duties with no restrictions, the day that I was able to go operational again. Since the shooting, it had been 2.5 years that I had been fighting, struggling, learning how to use my fingers, then learning how to operate weapons, then learning how to run, building my fitness, building up my skills to be able to go back to Star Group, proving myself to medical people, to boss, all this stuff. My whole focus had been on getting back to Star Group. Or actually, let me go back a step. My first priority was always just to get back to my family. And once I'd achieved getting back to my family, I was then able to look at getting back to other things in my life. But Star Group, I've been focused on it for 2.5 years, just driving myself to get back to Star Group. And I remember walking in through that door of Star Group on that first day, fully operational, was the biggest anticlimax of my life. Internally, I was going, yes, I am here. And I wasn't doing it, out in the open. It was all internal. Yes, I have made it. Damn, what do I do now? Because I didn't have any other goals. This was the one thing that I'd been focused on. I hadn't planned, if this works out, what will I do? And I remember it hitting me like a sledgehammer. It was just the biggest anticlimax of my life. So having reflected back on that, I didn't realise it at the time, but reflecting back on it, I realised that we do need to plan for all the bad things that might happen. But we need to plan for those big things, those great things that are going to happen too. And the other thing that I'll say about planning is that there is no plan that will survive encounter with the enemy. It's an old military adage. There is no plan that will survive encounter with the enemy. So whenever you implement a plan, those buggers out there are going to do something you didn't anticipate. So you've got to plan in flexibility. And I relate this back to some of our Star Group training, that our Star Group training is absolutely regimented. I know what the guy next to me is thinking before he thinks it, because we have gone through training so much. And our plans are so regimented that I know exactly how he's going to hit a window or door or whatever to effect an entry. But as much as it's absolutely regimented, we also regiment the fact that you've got to be flexible. If things go wrong, if somebody sees a different opportunity, all that planning for that part is flexibly moved back around this corner and you go and implement it there. So as much as planning is important, you've got to plan in flexibility too. Not regiment, this is the plan and we'll stick to the plan no matter what happens. Allow it to change. And the last thing for success, the last driver for success is support. And this is not about throwing support at other people, because we like to help other people. We like to see other people succeed. Other people like to see us succeed as well, but they can't help us unless we actually throw our hand in the air and say, hey, listen, I need some assistance. And we need to be bold enough to put our hand in the air and say, please, can I have some assistance? There's something here I don't know how to manage. This is bigger than I've ever imagined. And better still, I've got this brilliant idea, but I don't know how to implement it. There's something sensational I want to do. Can you give me some assistance? And, coincidentally, that's exactly how my TV series might come about. That's where I've got my support from already. I haven't put it out there to everybody, but my close friends, I've said, these are my thoughts. And they've gone, well, I can actually help you. I can put you in contact with, and all those sorts of things. So the 5 drivers is optimism, influence, passion, planning, and support. And I think that makes a massive difference.
Yeah, support, last bit. Taking it back to after you were in your hospital bed, did the psychologist and the shrinks turn up to assess you?
I insisted that they turned up. I was the first person to ask for them to come in. And a lot of people say, wow, that was a bit risky. I don't think so, because I didn't think I was going stupid or around the twist, or I didn't feel weak. But what I wanted to do was prepare myself for the future. I readily accepted that as a result of being shot and being in such a traumatic situation, I may have nightmares. I may get flashbacks. I may get into situations where I get scared just by the situation because it reminds me of it. And it's very real that depression may set in, as a result of these sorts of things. So I wanted to talk to the psychs. I wanted to pick their brain, not about will I go stupid, crazy, or idiotic, more about they've seen people deal with it well. They've seen people deal with these things badly. I wanted to pick their brain about, if it happens to me, what could I proactively do and how could I manage it in the best way? And so, yeah, I spoke to the psychs absolutely immediately and got the best advice I could.
Okay, so it's almost like you're anticipating what could go wrong, and you've got contingency plan B, C, and D kind of organized, yeah?
Absolutely, and that goes back again to accepting the reality of our world. As a result of the choices I've made, I've put myself in a situation where I got shot and it happened. Now I've got to look at what the future might hold for me, and depression, anxieties, nightmares, flashbacks, they're all a reality of following on from traumatic events. And I've got to say they did follow. They did happen, all of them.
Wow. So it's like most people will not take that on seriously because it means, oh my goodness, I have to take personal responsibility for my actions or inaction.
Yes.
And that is scary for some people, not because they don't want to, because they don't feel they have the capacity to, pull a rabbit out of the hat to get themselves out of a jam. So what can you say to them that says, look, folks, that's part and parcel of life?
It is. I mean, whether we like it or not, everything we do or everything we don't do is always going to have a consequence. Whether you do it or you don't do it, there is always going to be some consequence, and you're going to have to deal with it. So again, it comes back to passion, and I don't normally talk about passion, but it seems to be the flavour of the day. Do what you're passionate about. You're always going to have consequences. Even if you take no action at all, there are bad things that are going to happen. So, and there are going to be great things that happen as well. But do what you're passionate about. Bring on the problems that you want. Bring on the challenges that you are going to enjoy, and chase what you want to do. And I've gone off track, and I can't remember exactly what your question was now.
That's okay, because we're being featured on Blog TV. So, Derek, please say hi to all those people watching us on Blog TV, on Internet TV.
Hi, Blog TV. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay. So, those of you who came on late, Derek is a serving police officer, SA Police, police officer who got shot 14 times by somebody who was trigger happy. He survived, and he's gone on, not just to survive, but thrive. And he's got new horizons. Everything's opened up as possibly as a consequence of that. And this is, you're talking to a man who's got lots of ideas, lives life, doesn't just go through the motions, but lives life and takes it by the horns. So if you people out there want to ask him any questions, he's live now. We're live now. So Skype in any questions that you have about how to come back from a setback, and it doesn't get any worse than being pinged 14 times. So all you out there, we welcome you. So Derek, sorry, going back to your original thing about passion, you say it's a flavor of the month. I'd say it's just the flavor of our lives. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it has to be, if we're chasing something that we're passionate about, as I said before, there aren't going to be any obstacles too big. And we were talking a moment ago about dealing with the psychs and why I was prepared to deal with the psychs. One of the things that I think we are all scared of is showing our weaknesses. If we expose a weakness, people will think less of us. And when we put our hand up and say, hey, listen, I would like to speak to a psych, people may judge us and go, oh, you need to talk to a psych. Must be something wrong in your mind. I wasn't worried about exposing the weakness. I knew that this could possibly affect my life adversely in the future, and I wanted to do everything I could to minimise that effect. And talking to the psychs was important for me. And so I did it, and it turned out to be one of the best things I could possibly do. Because as I say, I had nightmares. Did I have flashbacks? I don't think I've actually had flashbacks, but I certainly had some nightmares. And I've been diagnosed with having depression as well. And I remember when I got diagnosed with depression, I went along to the doctor just to ask the doctor what was going on, because I wasn't sleeping well, I wasn't eating well, I wasn't enthusiastic, I wasn't training hard, I wasn't engaging with friends and all those sorts of things. And I thought, well, it must be my eating habits are affecting me badly. I don't have the right nutrition. So I go along to the doctor and I said, I want you to give me a blood test. Tell me what I'm missing in my diet. Tell me what supplements I need to have, what I need to change. And he said, well, tell me a little bit more. And I explained to him. He said, I want you to do this questionnaire. And I filled out the questionnaire. It was a questionnaire about depression. And I thought to myself, not a chance, easy, tick and flick. And he looked at it, assessed it, and he said, Derek, you've got mild depression. And I remember sitting there and going, you serious? Me? Mild depression? I was selected for Star Group because I'm mentally, physically, emotionally tough. I shouldn't get depression. But like that, I said, okay, what do we do about it? Because it goes back to, I spoke to the psychs and said, if these things happen to me, they are all reality. If these things happen to me, what do I need to do? And so I was already accepting depression may hit. It still hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But I said to the doctor, right, what do we do? Now, they immediately took me offline at Star Group. They didn't want to put a weapon in my hand for some reason. I don't know. And I was away from work for 28 days. And that's all, 28 days. I was reassessed. The depression had cleared up, and I went back to work, fully operational, back into the firing line, back into using weapons, and I have never looked back since, and never been diagnosed with depression ever since either. However, what I do is I recognise the symptoms within myself. I know, and being depressed, I think, is a natural state of life. Depressed is not depression. Depressed is sad, unhappy, stressed, worried, and we get, a little bit depressed about it. If we recognise it and manage it, then we can take that cycle back up again. But that cycle will go up and down, on a regular basis. If we don't deal with it properly, that's when it goes down into depression. And I'm not an expert on this. This is just my opinion and my understanding of it. But I think if we proactively deal with it when we get to that sad stage, and that doesn't mean refuse ourselves to be sad or beat ourselves up because we get a little bit mellow and we don't want to engage with people for a little while, because that's just a natural state. And even these days, sometimes I just go, no, I can't be bothered. I just want to sit back and relax and do nothing for a little while. But I know what's important to me. I know what I'm passionate about, and it doesn't take me long to get back into doing the things that I want to do, because I love it. But I didn't shy away from the fact, and I still don't shy away from the fact, I had depression. It could come and get me any time. But, and let me just clarify, I actually don't think I got depression as a result of the shooting, because I think the way I accepted the fact that I may get shot and accepted all the consequences that may come, they were all just, I knew they were going to happen. I think what I got depressed about was the way that other people were dealing with me after the shooting. Some people put up barriers in front of me to stop me getting back to work. And these people are people that I thought would actually support me. And the barriers just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I didn't anticipate it, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I think that sent me spiralling into depression, because I didn't anticipate it happening. I didn't have a contingency plan for it. I didn't know what to do. But spoke to the doctor, spoke to the psychs, analysed it, understood it. 28 days is all it took me to get back online and fully operational again. Once I had accepted this reality, okay, how do I proactively manage it?
Yeah, that's the operative phrase, isn't it? Proactive. Like you say, you cannot plan for every contingency, and that was one that came out of left field, which is basically a sense of betrayal. Like the people who were supposed to welcome you back sort of said, no, you're not coming back because we're not quite sure about your mental state, probably. But
Absolutely.
Once you identified it, you did. You brought it out into the sunshine and said, I'm going to pin a label on you and I'm going to deal with you.
Absolutely. And if I can just clarify that just a little bit more, I anticipated that people would expect me to prove myself. If somebody that I knew was coming back from something like this, yes, I would expect them to prove themselves. and I fully accepted that and was quite happy to prove myself over and over again just to make sure that I could do the job that I was going to do. I mean, people's lives were on the line, not just public, but my workmates, their lives were on their line. And if they thought that I might get into a situation where I might balk, have a flashback, not operate the way I'm supposed to, absolutely, there would have to be doubts about whether I could do it. And I accepted all that and was happy to jump hurdles to prove all those things. But I had proved them, and then everybody had said, yes, you're sensational, you can go back to work, absolutely, no problems. But then somebody else put another hurdle, and I jumped that one. And everybody said, yeah, okay, you've proved yourself. And then somebody put another hurdle, and they just kept on coming. So I accepted I had to prove myself, but when the hurdles just kept on going, and there's lots of injured workers that experience the same thing when they're just trying to get back to the other jobs that people do in offices, in construction, in all those sorts of things. People have all those hurdles to jump as well. They're natural. We have to be able to prove ourselves that we can do the job properly. But from left field, it came extra hurdles, and that just sent me spiraling.
Yeah, but you went and got help.
I went and got help. I jumped the next lot of hurdles and proved myself, and went back online and never looked back.
Fantastic. Look, we've got just about 9 minutes left, and something I want to talk to you about, which is very important because I think a lot of people out there in businesses, especially small businesses, can relate, because they're running a business and yet they have a family at home that also needs their time, attention, affection, and just a relationship, especially parents who work hard, 12-hour days or 100 hours a week, and they have a growing family. Now, being a police officer, you would have seen the best and the worst, and that would normally, if you picked up kids on the street who were not behaving and possibly getting it down the road to, petty crime and so forth, delinquency, you would have to say, look, the parents are involved at some stage or were not involved. So what can you say to parents in this sort of situation to engage their kids again, open up the channels of dialogue, especially when the kids get into the grunting teens where it's one syllable? How do you communicate with your child then?
I don't think there's anything better than spending time with your child. And it's got to be right from the outset. Just spend time with your children. People talk about, should it be quality time, should it be quantity of time? I think it needs to be both. Quantity of time is very, very important, but there's got to be some quality in there as well. You can't just spend time with your child sitting next to you while you're doing your work. You have to actually be able to engage with the child. Involve your children in things that are important to you, and get involved in things that are important to your children as well. If you see other parents going out and kicking a football and they're having great fun with their children, and you go, well, that's what I should do, but football's not important to you, and football's not important to your son or your daughter. It might be playing softball that's important to them, but you drag them out to play football because that seems to be what's working for that family. Well, you're dragging both of yourselves into situations you're not going to enjoy. Whereas if you can engage your children in something that you enjoy, children will actually pick up on that passion. They may not completely always enjoy it, but it works. But also look for the things that your kids are important. The things that are important to your children. You may not actually enjoy them completely either, but you've got to put yourself out there and you've got to do it for your children. But it's about spending quantity of time and quality of time, and actively engaging with your children and being part of their lives. And when they get to those stages where they just want to grunt and they don't want to communicate, allow it, because we've all done it. In fact, another quote I was reading just the other day was from Aristotle. And I'll frame it to start off with. We all get ourselves concerned about our children and the youth of today. Y generation. How are we going to survive with Y generation? They're all self-focused. They don't care about anybody else. It's only me and my money, blah, blah. I read a quote from Aristotle, and I think it was Aristotle. It may have been someone else, but it was back in that age. And if it was Aristotle said, I worry about the youth of today. They're self-focused. The girls dress in inappropriate ways. They don't care about communicating with their parents. I worry about society in the future because of what I see in the youth of today. It's always been there. Our youths come through it. We've just got to be there and shadow them. Spend quantity of time, spend quality of time, but allow them to be themselves as well, and know that they'll come through it.
Okay, so eventually they turn into the fogies that go, children of today don't understand.
If we honestly had conversations with our friends of our age and say, what were you like when you were a teenager? Did you communicate with your parents? Did you have a hard time? You will find that 50% of your friends had trouble with their parents. They hated their parents. They didn't get along well. But these are the people you associate with, and these are nice people. So we all have those issues. It is natural for society to have those issues. But I think we can have better relationships with our children if we don't fight them. Certainly we've got to direct them. And part of quality and quantity of time is supplying boundaries for your children and sticking to those boundaries with a little bit of flexibility here and there. But setting boundaries and loving boundaries. Tell your child, I care enough about you to set you some boundaries. If you don't have boundaries, it means you don't care. You go and do what you want. But if you set those boundaries and keep the children to those boundaries, it is a way of saying, I love you. It embraces them, virtually, in a way.
Wow, that's a good one for parents, especially who consider themselves time poor because they're busting a gut trying to make their businesses work. And I know that there are people like that in family businesses where it's just work. We come home, we maybe see the kids, and then it's like, okay, the kid's grown up before you know it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cat Stevens' song, Cats in the Cradle, is, it talks about when I get time, I'll spend time with my child. When I get time, I'll play football with you. When I get time, and he's always running off and doing business, hoping that he's going to build a great life and supply for his children. And when his life starts to settle and he starts saying, right, I'd like to spend time with you, his son starts saying, oh, Dad, I don't have time. Just give me the car. I've got a hot date. All those sorts of things. And obviously not a complete representation of the song. But what it represents is that the father is saying, when I set things up for you, we will have a great life together. And by the time he's ready, his son's not. And his son has actually turned out to be just like him. I love you, Dad, but I need to go and do this first. I love you, Dad, but I need to go and do that. Mm-hmm. So we've got to set up how we want our children to be by being the example, I guess. We need to be an example of...
It'll be a good thing, too, to drag them into the family business so they can see what's going on and appreciate what the parents are doing to ensure that the kids have a decent future.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not about dragging them in. Letting them see, discussing it with them is very, very important. If you've got some struggles in your work, you don't have to involve the children in the details, but you need to let them know. In fact, one of the things I used to do with my children when they were very, very young is I would have some frustrations. Certainly when I was going through my divorce period, I had some frustrations with my ex-partner, and I knew that was going to affect the way I spoke to my children. And I said to my children, I said, hey, listen, I'm absolutely frustrated for lots of different reasons at the moment. I want you to know that if I bite your head off, it's not you, it's just because I'm frustrated. Okay, please be understanding, and I'll come good eventually. But I was upfront with them and let them know what emotions I was feeling and what I was going through. And as a result, we still have a sensational relationship. And when I say don't drag them into the business, I've spoken about I want to do this TV series, and I thought my kids would be massively excited. And, yeah, we want to get involved. And I've given them opportunities to be involved, and they've gone, no, I've got all these other priorities. And so I'm allowing them to do them, but I'm still discussing it with them. They're involved. They're giving me advice. They're giving me opinions. But they haven't come... I mean, I'm not doing a lot with it at the moment anyway. But it's not dragging them in and saying you have to know about it. It's just opening that discussion up and providing them that opportunity. I mean, my children are 20 and 22 now, my biological children. I actually have 7 children, but 2 are biological, the other are stepchildren. And it's just opening that world up to them and allowing them to come in if they want to.
Okay, well, that's been a fascinating 60 minutes with you talking about how basically to come back from a setback, and that's putting it mildly. So if viewers out there in Blog TV and you want to get in touch with Derek and like his story and like him to speak for you and your company, or do some coaching and mentoring, how can they get in touch with you, Derek?
My website is derrickmcmanus.com, DERRICK, McManus, MCMANUS, all one word, .com. And my email and my phone number is on there, and would love to hear from anybody. I'm certainly travelling to California in the first half of March, so anybody in the US wants me to, and I'm essentially looking to fill time. If I'm not going to be speaking, I'm going to be spending money in shops, so even if you don't have a big budget, give me a buzz, because it will save me money, even if I'm not going to make a fortune. I just want to spend some time speaking and get exposed to the market over there, so please give me a buzz. Okay, fantastic. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and it's been inspirational, motivational, and not only that, I know that you've given people a fresh sense of hope and optimism, as you say. It's not all 100% bad, but plan for the worst, but also plan for the best. So on that note, thank you very much, Derek. God bless. Have a good day. Thank you, Laura. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Today's podcast is brought to you by ObesityHotline.com, the silent killer, providing support and encouragement in the prevention of this rising epidemic. Featuring the Body by Vi Challenge. Is there a quick answer to the question? Go to www.obesityhotline.com. You're watching and listening to Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at ConsciousEvolutionMedia.com.